The 2024 Central Illinois Corn Crop Tour. We are ready to break it down for you. Stay tuned on the other side, right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So, Jerry, we have been doing the Central Illinois Corn Crop Tour this year as usual. I've been there for the third time, sorry, and you've been doing this for several years. This time around, we had some very interesting uh, revelations on the first counties that we checked. That we have two clips here.
Hi, this is Jerry Gidel in our annual crop tour here around Central Illinois. At our first stop here, we had actually our second one. The first one, the crop was too immature. This was definitely in late milk, early dent, and actually we got some really good sized ears here. Some of the had a little pollination issue on this one over here, but overall it looks like things are off to a good start here. We're probably going to have a very comparable yield to last year's tour yields that were clear up at 260. I don't know, we haven't figured this out, but it will be interesting to see what the numbers are. But today we're out in the fields here on August 3rd checking out yields in northern and central Illinois. We're at west of El Paso, Illinois. On Highway 24, we've had 4 stops in today. Interesting scenario. We had good maturity in Grundy County. Livingston, though, really was behind what we anticipated. We even had some corn samples, one sample that was just barely out of blister. It's kind of a white ear. Here we are, definitely further along. You can see, though, pretty erratic kind of pollination. The one on the right is very big and good. The one on the left in the photo has a very shorter capability. We'll see how they turn out, but overall our totals have not been really crazy at this point. We haven't got any huge yields at this point, but we'll figure out how things go along. We're getting into our bigger areas, both McLean and DeWitt counties, and we'll see what happens from there. But here's our fourth stop of the day, and this will be a good test of seeing what we're seeing out there. By the way, the soybeans look very good and clear. Today's field actually is probably the furthest along. Lots of pods on the one you're just scanning on now.
But the end of the tour really changed the game. The Iroquois and the 4 counties were the game changers for this crop tour in 2024.
Oh, exactly right. The crop tour that you've been on for the last 3 years, and I've been involved with it really since 2014, and really covering the counties that are kind of circle Bloomington, Illinois. We try to drive out of Chicago here to the southwest, and we go down through Grundy County and on Highway 47. Then we end up going westbound on 116, Illinois 116, through Livingston, and then down into Woodford County. Then we go and circle around Bloomington and McLean County. We do our first stop in McLean, south of town there on 51 normally, US 51, I should say. And then we kind of have a short trip into DeWitt County, which has been a very good, strong county over time. And that and then we end up taking US 54 really kind of back to Chicago through McLean again, and then into Ford and Iroquois, and so that particular it hits quite a few big and important counties in central Illinois. I know it's not a tour that's hits all the state of Illinois, but I think the key thing is that it's a tour that gives us comparisons of how the really heart of central Illinois' corn crop looks like on each year in early August. And I think again this year the good thing this year, by the way, we didn't have the rains that really slowed things down, caused some aggravations. We actually didn't take one stop last year because it was raining so hard, and then we had difficulties towards the end of the tour of finding a place to take a sample because it was still raining in Iroquois County as we were going north back to Chicago. But in general, you just always don't know exactly where the best county is going to be. We've had good yields in Grundy County, which is where Maison in our first county we usually take. That was last year's situation. In the past, DeWitt's been very good, things like that. And at this point, Woodford County was our best yield on the tour this year on corn at 257 bushels. It had the very strong, ear counts, because basically to determine a a yield in a field is that you really look at the number of ears, the number of rows on that ear, and the number of kernels that are in on average for the 6 years that we normally take as our sample when we stop. And then we are always looking for a 30-inch standard row because that's the kind of the calculations. You could adjust it for 20 inches or other inches and all that kind of stuff. But when we kind of found, and we did find one field, by the way, I think you remember, late in I think it was actually in Iroquois, we had to look for a different field because it was 20 inches and we decided not to mess with it. Anyway, that all put together and our formula, and that's how we get our corn yields from there. And it turns up that Woodford County, which is just north of Bloomington on I-39, and that had our best yield of 257 bushels. And the interesting twist about it is that our next yield field that had the lowest average of 187 was just around Bloomington on just south of there, going on the highway goes from Bloomington to Decatur, US 51. And so it's always interesting, and to some extent, I have to say that most cases you're going to find more good yields in McLean County and less good yields in Woodford County, but that's kind of the luck of the draw. But I think that does taking out 8, 9, 10 samples on this tour does, I think, give us a good final average. But from there, now.
Well, maybe the surprise this year were the also the disappointing numbers from Mason County.
Oh yeah, Mason usually got some very good yields in Grundy and Mason in the past, and last year, as we mentioned, we had like a 260 yield out of there. We only had a 204 bushel yield this year, and then the Livingston County averages were only 190 on the corn. So that's what we had the good yield in Woodford, but then we didn't have a great yield in on one of the stops in McLean County. And McLean County is the biggest it has the biggest area of corn and beans in the state. So we kind of take two samples there. The second sample was better at 209, and that after he came out of DeWitt. But DeWitt was, that was the other thing. That's a strong county usually. it only came in at 200. But the one thing that and that kind of tainted some of our comments that we did that you have did in our little two videos, and that maybe this year's corn crop was not going to be as strong on average on our tour. But the last two counties, and Ford and Iroquois, have had some issues many times over the years. I don't know that we're coming up 54 and that type of thing. I'm not sure exactly how good a soil it's there. I hate to make any detrimental comments about that, but in general, they haven't been as strong. Well, surprise, surprise, our last two samples that we took in both counties came through at 220 to 235, and that made a big difference. And the one thing that's always important in these things is the fact that consistency of the yields and what we got on this tour. And we've had ranges from 155 to as high as 240 type situations. Well, this year we only had a range from 187 to up to that 257 in Woodford. So the total number of yields we came up with were more concentrated and a narrow range, and I think that was the interesting twist that we came through here on our average. And then when we put all of the samples into our for the complete tour, we came up, the calculations came in at 213.7 bushels, up basically 3 bushels from last year. Now, that has been the highest number we've had, but I would have to say that if I always caution people that when you look at these numbers, well, that shouldn't, there's a lot of, excuse me, the state of Illinois that's south of St. Louis that raises corn. They don't have the strong enough fields down there, strong enough soils to have great yields like that. Same situation in parts of Western Illinois that's kind of up and down. So this is the comparisons to each of the areas is what you need to look at. This is a positive for Illinois, but I wouldn't guarantee that the state of Illinois' state yield is going to be 213 or 14 bushels at this point. Actually, the USDA's July number was 210. So that's the thing is interesting, and particularly as we look at the upcoming USDA report on August 12th, they're just going to utilize producers' looks at their corn, and that there's not going to be any field checks or people going out and counting errors and things like that. It all starts in September, so that's going to make things quite interesting. Personally, I kind of feel like that producers are always a little conservative, so a possibility of the U.S. number to be slightly down from the 181 bushel trend line yield is not something that's impossible. But
well,
the other thing,
how usually the Central Illinois plays around with the national average?
well, interesting is the fact that the national average has been in the 170 to 177 range, which we had 177 last year, and the state of Illinois yield was 206 bushels per acre. So there's a significant difference in the national yield. But if you're going to have a good yield nationally, you got to have probably a good yield in Illinois. So, but the relationships of the Illinois yields are always on the high side. Basically, probably between Iowa and Illinois, and probably 75% of the time, Illinois has got a higher yield. Even sometimes Indiana has a second highest yield than Iowa does. on a traditional basis. So to some extent, the 213 bushel yield that we came up with makes some sense. I'd have to say that I do not anticipate the USDA to issue a 213 bushel or 14 bushel yield on the August crop report, partly because I don't think the producers out there feel that it's been a erratic season. Now, the one thing that's made it kind of interesting to me is that we had a good surge of plantings in August, both corn and soybeans, and we had a lull in there because of 14 to as many as 20 days of very poor weather to get plantings in. Then we had another surge of that, and that's kind of interesting. There's some people out there in the trading world think that delay in there and the lateness of some of the plantings in some states is going to prompt more a reduction or some reduction in the planted acreage number that was issued back in June. The one big factor in this whole thing that's going to have a big impact on the U.S. soybean, well, both soybeans and corn, but basically, we're talking about corn. I'm anticipating the area up in northwest Iowa, southwest Minnesota, and southeast South Dakota. Back in late June, there was a heavy duty rainstorm that lasted about 2 to 3 days up there and dumped as much as anywhere from 6 to as much as 12 inches of rain. And there's definitely lost some acres up there that won't be harvested. It'll be adjusted in the state yields. That's the thing that's going to be interesting on the August crop report.
Yeah, and another factor of this tour is that some counties we have noticed that there was a delay in the crop development compared to previous years. Even we could notice that on the color of those kernels.
Exactly. That's the thing that popped up right away when our tour. We had a very typical kind of field sample in Grundy County. We went down further into Livingston and drove really straight across the whole county. And we actually, the first sample we had, probably we should have decided to go someplace else and take a sample because it was a blistered ear. It was just barely getting pollinated. We made the judgments because we had already stopped and did the sample and all that kind of stuff. The similar one on the west side of Pontiac on the same sample in Livingston, it was a little better, but still not as good. That's you think about that. I said, well, geez, but that happened because of that we just talked about, that 14 to 20 day issue in Illinois and in many places. This just wasn't in Illinois that we didn't get the corn plantings done. Yet our progression of development has been kind of masked because of the heat that we've had this season. It hasn't been blistering hot of 100 degrees and that, but we've had consistently above normal temps, and that's pushed the kind of mask some of our issues. And I think you're exactly right. That's another feature in here that, as we were going later in the tour, we decided, I think you and I and Jack Scoville, that we wanted to check fields that had the silks on them that were dark. We didn't want to do definitely no clear glassy style silks or even some light pink ones, because then we really, and I think there's going to be issues out there that has an impact in the corn crop going along here. So yes, that's the reason why I think that I don't see the USDA's number being above this trend line number. I don't think it's going to be dramatically different. I'm looking for 180.1 versus the 181 the USDA is going to have, and that the soybeans, it's always somewhat of a crapshoot. As you know, when we do this tour, we don't try to make any kind of judgments. We try to look at and see if it's been potting, was it blooming, is it somewhere in between, that kind of stuff. The thing that you have seen and I have seen over the years, that Central Illinois soybean crop is one of the toughest ones to judge because it's just a green carpet when you look out the window. The producers down there do a great job of keeping their weed control and that going. So we did see two or three, maybe four fields that the weather got them there in late June or late May and early June. They didn't get their weed control on, but overall it was there. But I think you heard and I heard as we were going down the field or down the highway, Jax kept looking out the window and kept saying how short the beans were. And I think he was right. Now, short beans isn't telling you the whole story that there's no chance for yields, but it's like anything else. If there's not enough places to put pods on the stems, you may be running out. And also, I think there could be some maturity situations. Not every field that we see, considering how many people in Illinois actually planted beans in early in April. There was some fields that were just blossoming. So it's the whole state of Illinois is not way ahead on every field of beans at this point. So there's definitely some vulnerability during the month of August here. One thing that can happen to beans is that it's really pushing that high 90s in Illinois for a week or 10 days. That could definitely impact the soybeans final yields. But right now, at least I'm kind of looking for a number around 51.5 from this Illinois number on the August 12th number, down from the trend line of 52. But right now, we got a long ways before we know what the bean yield in the state of Illinois is. But in general here, the crop has good prospects. I guess how the weather comes about in August will determine really across the U.S. What our bean yields will be at the end of the year. But we haven't had 52 bushel yield in many, many years. I think it's been way back in 2015 or 16, and we had a very good bean year. But other than that, we haven't been much above 50 to 50.5.
All right. On Friday, we'll catch up again and talk about these markets.
Exactly. It could be an interesting one here at this point. We're kind of cool in the Eastern Corn Belt. This week, we had lots of hot and humidity situations up until today, and so it'll be interesting to. But at this point, we got this financial stuff going on in the background in this week, so it's going to be interesting how today actually the market's kind of bounced a little bit instead of while the stock market was going down, the bean market was going up. It's always an interesting twist, isn't it?
All right. Thank you very much.
Take care. Have a good. I sure appreciate you coming out for a trip again this year, and let's hopefully get you back a lot faster than we did this year back in New Jersey.
All right.